Meord stands in front of a dusty piece of land that looks pretty messy. He sees a group of guys on both sides. He sheds out his arm, closes his eyes, and uses his magic wind power, which sounds like thunder and clears the whole area. Roderick tells everyone to get back to work. They're amused by Meord's magical abilities, which he uses to fix up the place. Meord wants to leave, but they call him back and ask him to take care of the next area. He sighs, showing how tough it is for him. Light starts shining over the place, gradually spreading all around. Meord appears from this light, sighs, and opens his door. The kids and Elsie welcome him home. Elsie serves him tea and sees that he's really tired. Meord explains he's worn out because he worked on the ground earlier that day. The others chuckle lightly and mention that his relationship with Roderick seems a bit off, implying he acts more like Roderick's servant. But Meord doesn't dispute it. He admits he's a white-collar worker at heart. Elise and the kids don't quite understand what that means, so they ask him, but he doesn't answer. Instead, he excuses himself to change clothes. As he enters his room singing, he reflects on a time in his past life when he had a real white-collar job. In a flashback, Meord comes home from work in modern clothes. He feels stressed and tries to rest, but quickly decides against it and starts cooking instead. He heads to his modern kitchen and makes some fried pork ribs. After cooking, he sets the table to eat. But as he sits down, he instantly falls asleep. A little while later, he wakes up and realizes his meal isn't where he left it, and he's also in a different room. He sees he has the body of a child and realizes it's a dream. He tries to go back to his pork ribs, but his dad wakes him up instead. He notices the room is filled with people, and it feels like there's a celebration going on. He's confused because he doesn't know who these people are or what's happening. He spots the little boy's dad talking to some guests. After waking him, his dad tells him to get up and introduces him to their guests. He introduces him as his youngest son, Wendelin. His dad encourages him to introduce himself, but Wendelin doesn't know what to say since he has no idea who he is right then. His older brother, Eric, steps in, introduces himself, and takes the attention away from Wendelin. He thanks the crowd for coming to celebrate their older brother Kurt's wedding. Eric introduces his brother as Wendelin, von Wendelin Baumeister, and that's when Wendelin realizes who he is. But he's still not sure about everything going on. Eric spends some time with Wendelin and gets him a drink. He asks why Wendelin was quiet earlier, but Wendelin wants to know what's happening. Eric thinks it's too complicated for a 5-year-old, but explains it's brother Kurt's wedding. Pointing to him, Kurt is marrying Amelie, the second daughter of a noble, Sir Mainbach. He further explains to him that their father had trouble finding a partner for Kurt, and is very relieved that a noble's daughter has married into their family. Wendelin wants to know if they might also become nobles now that their brother is marrying a noble. Eric explains that their family is genuinely noble too. Wendelin is amazed to find himself in such a luxurious place. He thinks they must be highly ranked to throw such a big ceremony. He feels happy knowing that as the son of this family, he doesn't have to worry about starving while enjoying his meal. The next day, Wendelin is seated in a room, having a meal of brown bread and light soup with his family. He complains about the dry bread and notices that the room looks very different. He asks his father about his brother Elric, but his mom chimes in, saying that Elric is out fishing. Wendelin wonders why their home looks different, and when he gets the chance to talk to Eric, he asks several questions. Eric explains that all the paparazzi were just for a celebration, and now they're back to their normal lives. Wendelin meets his other brothers, Helmetu, Kurt, Paul, Herman, Walter, and Carlin quickly realizes he is the 8th son, which he exclaims. Wendelin holds a map and points out the capital of Stuttgart, which has a population of 1 million people, the highest in the kingdom. He learns that the biggest trading center in the south, Breichberg, is in the dukedom of Bleichroder, with a population of 200,000. He continues narrating as he goes further south to the Baumeister Knightdom, which has a population of 800. Wendelin describes himself as the 8th son of a poor noble family living in the sticks, stating that his life is really messed up. Wendelin notices his brothers planning to leave and saying goodbye to their mom, and he tries to stop them, but they remind him of their agreement to leave after brother Kurt's wedding. He tries to convince them that they can still inherit the land here, but they explain that poor nobles do not divide their land, and it all goes to brother Kurt since they're giving up their rights for a monetary settlement. His brothers explain that this decision means they won't remain nobles and will have to find their path in the capital. They hope to learn to read and write and become soldiers, lower management, or adventurers, but it all comes down to their skills. Just before they leave, one brother advises Wendelin to stop goofing off, or he might regret it later. Then they disappear into the distance. In the next scene, Wendelin is on a ladder searching for useful books on a huge shelf. He places one book back, causing a couple of others to fall, and a piece of paper catches his eye. It's titled Magical Aptitude Crystal Ball Instruction Manual. The paper explains that the crystal ball can measure your aptitude for magic, but at first, he doesn't take it seriously, thinking magic is out of reach. However, as he keeps reading, he begins to be convinced, as it states that everyone has mana, but only one in many thousands has enough to cast magic spells. His pessimistic side tells him that what he just read red means he can't use magic, but he decides to give it a try because each red convinces him more than before. He finishes reading the paper and is annoyed, wondering who would believe the nonsense he just found as he puts the crystal ball in front of him. Wendelin yells at the ball, hoping to see a change, but nothing happens, confirming his distrust in what he just read about the crystal ball. As he gets up to leave, the ball suddenly glows very brightly. He is so shocked that he doesn't move until the glow disappears. This prompts Wendelin to look back at the paper, which explains that you have a high aptitude for magic if the crystal ball shines like a rainbow. It adds that you should consult specialized guides if that's the case. Wendelin rushes back to the shelf, searching for a specialized guide on magic, but frustratingly finds nothing. Wendelin feels frustrated as his father walks into the room to find him surrounded by a pile of books. Wendelin quickly asks his dad if they have any more books, but unfortunately, his father can't read and needs him to go get some firewood. The lonely forest seems like a perfect chance for Wendelin to practice magic, but his attempts don't yield anything good. As he sits there feeling disappointed, a character appears before him, alerted by the earlier moment when Wendelin lit the crystal ball. The character calms Wendelin's fears by introducing himself as a magician, and he gently takes the improvised stick weapons Wendelin was using for protection. When the magician tosses the stick away, it triggers a series of events that leads to a giant rock crashing down on an even bigger buffalo. This causes the buffalo to charge at them, and the magician drives Wendelin to successfully cast his first magic spell. The magician reveals that he is a former court magician from the dukedom of Blycroder, named Alfred Rainford. Alfred reassures Wendelin that he has the potential to become an even greater magician, and the scene comes to an end. Wendelin is sitting with Alfred as he receives a proposal. Alfred informs Wendelin that he intends to pass his magical powers to him. This surprises Wendelin, who questions why Alfred would want to do that since he has no money to pay for magic lessons. Alfred explains that he's looking for a disciple and would rather teach him magic than take money. Wendelin agrees, saying he's willing to be Alfred's student. Alfred is a bit taken aback when Wendelin immediately starts calling him master. He tells Wendelin that their training will begin the next day and asks him to keep it a secret between them, as having too many people know could lead to disputes over succession rights. Alfred elaborates on the powers of being a magician, mentioning that, in an instant, Wendelin could become a successor no matter his family status. The next day, they start training. Alfred teaches Wendelin how to manage magic capacity, explaining that it allows a magician to align his limited capacity with that of another magician who has more. As they go through this process, Alfred is impressed to find that Wendelin's magical capacity has even surpassed his own. The training continues, and Alfred notes that Wendelin has gained a lot of experience in just a few days. He brings back vegetables for Wendelin, claiming he went out for food. After dinner, Wendelin is thrilled by the praise he receives from everyone for the meal prepared that evening. They believe he has a talent for foraging. Alfred and Wendelin soar above the ground as they move on to the next phase of training. Alfred teaches Wendelin more about controlling power and tracking it. As part of this training, Wendelin hunts game from a long distance, and they enjoy it grilled while discussing the training. Alfred advises Wendelin not to venture deep into the woods for hunting, adding that the enchanted forest is home to monsters. Wendelin notices that his brother, Kurt, has been watching him lately and shares this with Alfred. Alfred provides potential reasons for Kurt's behavior, suggesting he might believe Wendelin has gained power or is worried about losing his succession rights. Wendelin confides in Alfred that he's unsure of what he wants to do with his life. Alfred suggests that Wendelin become an adventurer, a path he himself took in the past. Excited by this idea, Wendelin informs his family. However, he faces a challenge when he learns there's no money for his enrollment in an adventurer's academy, which makes him sad. The next day, Alfred tells him more about the academy, including how he can earn money for tuition, which excites Wendelin. He also informs him that the city where the academy is located, Brykeburg, is quite far away, so he'll need to learn travel magic, which Alfred also calls flight magic. Alfred then demonstrates how it's done. The following day, Alfred tells Wendelin that his training will end soon. Wendelin is surprised since he just started learning flight magic. However, Alfred reminds him that he has already mastered the basics, which is enough to handle any challenges he might face. He doesn't tell Wendelin the real reason why their training is concluding early. During dinner with his family, a conversation arises about a whispering dead spotted in the woods. Wendelin learns that a whispering dead is an undead being that retains its powers and can converse with people, looking similar to humans. Quite suddenly, Wendelin's mind flashes back to the day he felt Alfred's skin, leading him to strange thoughts about the possibility that his master is a whispering dead. He then heads into the woods, looking for his master, and finds him. Alfred asks about his mission at this hour, and Wendelin explains the danger he was warned about just minutes ago by his family, the whispering dead wandering in the woods. Wendelin begs his master to go with him to the mansion since the monster could appear at any moment, but Alfred refuses. Instead, he tries to convince Wendelin that there's no danger, and that he is, in fact, the whispering dead creature he mentioned. Wendelin disagrees, insisting that Alfred is alive, not dead. Alfred starts explaining how it all happened. He begins with the deadly illness that the Duke's eldest son had, which made the Duke so desperate for a cure that he ventured with Alfred into an enchanted forest. But to enter the forest, they first had to clear it of monsters. They had an army of about 2,000 men, yet the monsters greatly outnumbered them, and no matter how many they killed, more kept coming. Alfred talks about how he fought until he ran out of mana, and his his frustration turned him into a whispering dead. He tells Wendelin that he would finally pass on if his desire was fulfilled, as that is how it works. His wish, as he explains, is to meet someone worthy to whom he can pass on his magic power, which is why he was so happy the day he sensed Wendelin's presence. Alfred also explains why he didn't tell Wendelin he was a whispering dead. It's because Wendelin is still very young, and the revelation might scare him off. He apologizes for lying. Then, he asks Wendelin if he will grant his last wish so he can be free, ensuring his spirit is released. He promises to teach Wendelin the magic spells he will need, spells Alfred can't use on himself but believes Wendelin can help him with, to purge him, to destroy him. Wendelin cuts him off, saying he doesn't want to destroy Alfred because he's still his master, but Alfred shows him how his mana is fading rapidly and warns this will make him unclean and turn him into a zombie that attacks people. The magic spell Alfred promises to teach Wendelin is holy magic, which he claims is the same as the life force of all creatures. He urges Wendelin to duplicate that life force within himself, using his powers. Wendelin starts to do as instructed, holding his master's hands and trying with all his strength to replicate the life force inside him. Alfred encourages him to push harder, needing more energy from Wendelin for it to work. Wendelin gets distracted, telling his master he doesn't want to erase him. Alfred urges him to remember everything he's learned over the past weeks, and believe he can become an even better magician with powers far beyond his own. Alfred thanks him for trying and encourages him to send him to a peaceful place. Wendelin releases his master's hands, takes a few steps back, and thanks Alfred. He promises to fulfill his master's wish as he channels all his energy into casting the spell on Alfred. It works. Alfred feels the warmth of the magic flowing through him, and in that moment, he vanishes. Wendelin is left in tears as his master completely disappears, but Alfred encourages him to stay strong, reminding him that his life has just begun. Wendelin cries even harder as he realizes his master is gone forever. He wipes his tears and, from where he stands, vows to follow his master's teachings. Wendelin has grown a lot as he sets off, leaving his family behind. They all say goodbye as he starts his long journey, heading to Breitberg, where he plans to enroll in the Adventurers Academy. It's a bright, cloudy morning, and the sun shines sweetly on the mini arena at Adventurers Academy, where several fighters clash their swords against each other during practice. Meanwhile, inside one of the classrooms, the students introduce themselves one by one. Louise goes first, telling the others that she's the third daughter of the Overweg family, known for their martial arts teachings. She mentions that she has been studying the magic fist style since she was a little girl. Next, a student introduces herself as Ina, the third daughter of the Hillenbrand family, who teach spearmanship in the dukedom of Bleichroder. The final student, Wendelin, introduces himself as the eighth son of the Baumeister knightdom. He adds that he prefers the name Well, catching the entire class's attention. Wendelin feels confused by their stares and wonders if mentioning his nickname caused the awkwardness, but before he can think more about it, the instructor jumps in, explaining the scholarship class curriculum. He hands out forms to every student, one for party registration, and explains they will train in groups starting next month. He encourages them to decide who they'll join before then. Wendelin realizes it's like picking teams, and he immediately worries about whether he'll measure up. At the cafeteria, Wendelin grabs something to eat but still feels upset about earlier in class, feeling like an outsider. Meanwhile, Lena chats with Louise, her childhood friend, about the unique student, Wendelin. Louise points out it's rare to see magic practitioners and is surprised to learn his abilities are as strong as those of top-class adventurers. Another student, a skilled swordsman, overhears them and joins the chat, saying the instructor already decided there wasn't much he could teach Wendelin since he knows so much, and thus was released from class. He highlights the advantages of having Wendelin on their training party next month, mentioning that most party members usually stick together and become adventurers after graduation. They all notice everyone else in the cafeteria staring at Wendelin, suspecting they share the same thoughts. The third student pulls out a form with Louise's name on it. Louise asks why her name is there, and he explains that although Wendelin is special, he might be wondering if they're worthy to form a party with him. Louise agrees, thinking this is why he's often alone. Lena seems less convinced. The third student then proposes a plan, suggesting they leverage the fact that all three of them are exceptional, himself as a top swordsman, Louise as a top martial artist, and Lena as a top spearwoman. He insists that if they're all in the same party, Wendelin would want to join them too. Louise thinks it's a good idea, but Lena remains skeptical and doesn't believe it will work. The third student stays confident and introduces himself as Erwin von Arnim, the fifth son of the Arnim knightdom. Louise also introduces herself and Aina to him. Wendelin wants to make friends at the academy, but when he finally builds up some courage to try, he hears laughter from the table where Louise, Lena, and Erwin are sitting. They've been joined by a trio who call themselves the Axe Trio. One of them tells Louise and her friends that the Axe Trio knows they want Wendelin in their party, but confidently claims that Wendelin will join them instead. The instructor holds another class with the students and acknowledges that some of them don't receive stipends from their parents, meaning they'll need to work part-time to support themselves and pay for tuition. Wendelin is among those students. The instructor advises these students to go hunting for games, as recommended by the academy. However, they'll need to hunt in groups since it's dangerous to go alone. Wendelin faces one of his biggest challenges yet, joining a group. He sighs in disappointment, doubting anyone would want to hunt with him, Louise, Aina, and Erwin discuss asking Wendelin to join their group, but decide to wait so as not to disappoint him and ruin their chances of having him with them. They aim to make their hunt successful, hoping to impress Wendelin. The hunt starts as different groups return with their catches to sell. Erwin is impressed by Louise and Ina's skills as they bring in a large prey. He asks if they've been training since childhood, and they compliment his swordsmanship, to which he replies that he's also been training since he was a kid. The trio of Erwin, Louise, and Ina ventures deeper into the forest to hunt. They shouldn't be in that part of the woods, but their determination drives them, and they aren't afraid. Ina hesitates and suggests they turn back, but just then, they hear sounds nearby large wolves. They're surrounded by these predators and immediately draw their weapons. Wendelin stands on a small hill, sensing something is off. He uses his powers to scan the forest and sees people surrounded by wolves, feeling an urge to save them. He hopes this will lead to friendship with them. The fight erupts between the wolves and the trio. They manage to take down several wolves, but soon realize more are approaching. One wolf targets Louise, but Erwin intervenes, getting hurt in the process. Almost instantly, 5 or 6 wolves lunge at them. Wendelin arrives and raises barriers from the ground, defeating the wolves and protecting the others. They're all shocked and unsure of what just happened when they hear a voice beyond the barrier asking if they're okay. Wendelin steps out, revealing himself to them. Back at the academy, the trio apologizes to Wendelin, explaining that they just wanted to get his attention without causing trouble. Wendelin is surprised, especially when Aina invites him to form a party with them. The sun shines brightly over the Duke's garden party, where people gather to enjoy themselves. Some students, including Louise and her friends, notice the Duke standing a few meters away, observing how young he is too young to be in charge. A subject approaches him and whispers something. Almost immediately, he looks in the direction of Louise, Aina, Erwin, and Wendelin. The trio gets excited as he walks toward them, but then he walks past them to greet Wendelin instead. The Duke asks to speak with him privately, and Wendelin agrees. Before they head to the residence, Wendelin requests that his friends Erwin, Aina, and Louise join them since they're in the same party at school. The Duke agrees, and they enter together, all amazed by the beauty of the place. The Duke introduces Wendelin to the court magician, Brantak, who approaches Wendelin and shakes his hand. The Duke shares more about the magician, explaining that Brantak uses tracking magic, which allows him to trace anyone's magical power from a distance if he's met them in person. He recognizes Wendelin as someone from the same region as his servant, Alfred, a top magician who disappeared years ago. Brantak deduces that Wendelin must be the disciple Alfred chose, especially since Wendelin now possesses Alfred's magic bag, which he has wanted to return for a while. Wendelin shares details about himself, his past, and the magic bag. Wendelin and his friends Louise, Aina, and Erwinari aboard a magical airship heading to the grand capital city to celebrate the wedding of Wendelin's big brother, Eric. Everyone is dressed to impress. Lena wonders why Brantak is also joining them for the wedding, and Wendelin explains that Brantak is heading to the capital to report on his domain status and has offered to guide them since it's on his way. They are all a bit anxious about who will attend the wedding, hoping to meet some nobles. Wendelin reassures them that Eric is marrying into the noble Brant family, so there should definitely be nobles at the wedding. Wendelin finds a guidebook for the capital. Meanwhile, a magician, who is sipping from a bottle, notices something ominous. A dark cloud rolls in as a massive dragon emerges from it. The other passengers on the airship start to panic as the creature gets closer. An official on board tries to calm everyone, who are all demanding to know what will be done about the situation. He mentions the mage, Brantak. Brantak is explaining to some officials why he can't tackle the dragon himself. It's an undead dragon. He emphasizes that it can only be defeated using holy magic, which he doesn't have access to. Panic spreads among the group, but he reassures them that there's another mage on board Wendelin. Wendelin calls out, saying he can't stop the monster either since he's inexperienced. Brantak encourages him to be brave and gives him instructions. They both get to work. Everyone tumbles and bumps around, except for Wendelin, who uses his wind magic to stay steady, like a little green leaf in the wind. Brantak shields the airship with a magical barrier. Through the window, they can all see the giant, bony dragon with glowing eyes swooping in. Everyone gasps, including the usually fearless Brantak, who swallows hard. Wendelin knows he has to act. He suddenly has an idea, grabs his trusty staff, and charges at the dragon, his friends cheering him on. He fires a blast of light, magic zap. The dragon roars and swipes at Wendelin with its bony claws, but he dodges just in time, agile as a squirrel. Brantak keeps the airship protected, the magic shield shining brighter than ever. Wendelin grits his teeth, focusing on the pulsing golden light in his staff. A blinding beam of light erupts from his staff, piercing the dragon's skull like a sunbeam cutting through fog. The dragon shrieks, its glowing eyes dimming like dying embers. It tumbles through the air, scattering bones like hail until it crashes into the clouds below with a bone-jarring boom. Brantak calls for Wendelin to gather the dragon's bones as they start to break apart and fall. Wendelin collects them and spots a gem among the fragments. There's a brief moment of silence before loud cheers erupt. The airship shakes with joyful shouts and stomping feet. Wendelin Wendellin's friends crowd around him, patting his back and shining with pride. They all raise a toast to celebrate their victory over the monstrous dragon. Brantak introduces Wendelin to Aruterio, who was Brantak's partner back when he was still an adventurer. He mentions that Aruterio currently runs a big trading company in the capital and is known for his political connections. Aruterio exchanges friendly greetings with Wendelin, calling him a little hero. The airship smoothly glides towards the capital. They continue their journey safely as they approach the capital. Wendelin leans against the railing, while Louise, Ina, and Erwin stand beside him, all watching the world shrink beneath them. The airship gently descends and lands softly on the water. As they depart from the ship, they get an even better view of the capital. Brantak leaves Wendelin and his friends, including Aruterio, to go elsewhere. Erwin suggests they take a walk around the capital, but as they turn, they see several horses and horsemen approaching, who stop a few yards away from them. Erwin thinks they've done something wrong, but one of the horsemen dismounts and walks towards them, kneeling a few steps away as he addresses Wendelin as the Dragon Slayer. Almost immediately, a chariot pulls up in front of them. The door swings open, and the horseman gestures towards it, saying the king expects them. They're all surprised by this invitation to see the king. The chariot takes them to the king's palace, but only Aruterio and Wendelin step out of the chariot there. The others stay inside, calling out that they're headed to see his brother. Aruterio signals for Wendelin to follow him as they both make their way into the palace. A royal servant announces Wendelin von Benno Baumeister, the ancient dragon slayer, to the king. He also mentions that Wendelin is accompanied by Aruterio Merchant, who is representing the mage, Brantak. The palace has several subjects and royals standing around as Wendelin and Aruterio walk towards the king. Aruterio removes his hat and bows. Wendelin, feeling a bit confused, does the same. The king asks them to raise their heads, and Wendelin is surprised to see that the king is quite young. The king then honors Wendelin by granting him the 6th rank of baronet for slaying an ancient dragon and saving the lives of the people on the magical airship. Wendelin is speechless, but Aruterio whispers to him about what to do, which is to pledge as he taught him. Wendelin does so with an unusual calmness and confidence, pledging to serve the kingdom and its people. He is also awarded the Twin Dragon Medal. Afterward, Aruterio and Wendelin leave the palace, and as they head out, they encounter someone doing stunts with his spear, hoping to be hired by Wendelin as a retainer. Wendelin is surprised at how dramatically his life has changed and feels a bit disappointed. The next day, on the wedding day, Wendelin and his friends are walking through the wedding grounds when they notice some members of the groom's family who don't welcome them warmly as they approach. Wendelin realizes they are unhappy and tries to figure out what the problem is. They explain their situation about needing gifts for the wedding and stress that it would be embarrassing if they presented a cheap gift or nothing at all. While they're thinking about what to do, Wendelin offers to pay for the gifts. Wendelin takes his friends to the palace and asks them to help make something he's been trying to prepare for a long time, a certain meal that they all need to work together to prepare. He also uses magic to speed up some of the processes, and once they're finished, they serve it to some of the nobles around. They enjoy it, praising the chef. Wendelin feels a wave of joy as he's content after working hard to make the meal come together. They all eat and are very satisfied. After completing the true baptism, Cardinal Hohenheim opens a door for Wendelin and warmly invites him to take a seat while holding the door for him. Once Wendelin enters, Wendelin turns back to express his gratitude to the Cardinal for inviting someone as young as him to participate in the true baptism. The Cardinal talks about how big of an honor the baptism is and how it's given to the chosen ones. While he speaks, Wendelin pulls out a gift wrapped in green to show his appreciation. He asks the Cardinal to please accept it, even if it's not much. The Cardinal laughs, puts his hands on Wendelin, calls him Baronet Baumeister, and prays that God will grant him protection, and they both laugh. Later, as they sit in the room, there's a knock at the door. A girl outside politely asks to be let in, and after receiving permission, she opens the door. Wendelin watches in awe as a beautiful blonde nun in a black robe enters with tea. The Cardinal introduces her as his granddaughter and tells Wendelin to go introduce himself. The girl introduces herself as Elise Katharina von Hohenheim, and Wendelin follows suit. When he looks into her eyes, he notices something unusual but keeps it to himself. Then the Cardinal mentions that he's also noticed something strange. Wendelin confirms that he has and asks if Elise has magic powers. The Cardinal replies that she does have some magic but can only use healing magic. The Cardinal downplays it, but Wendelin finds it incredible, mentioning that the only holy magic he can use is purification. The Cardinal expresses how impressed he is that Wendelin can use any holy magic. Wendelin asks Elise if she uses her magic to heal the wounded in the church, and even though Elise doesn't respond, she smiles and continues pouring tea. The Cardinal confirms this, explaining that in addition to Elise, several nuns in training do charity work and distribute food. Many people call Elise Saint Hohenheim. Wendelin takes his seat, saying it's wonderful, and asks if Elise will become a member of the clergy, but her grandfather shakes his head, saying he'd prefer Elise to marry like a normal girl. Wendelin smiles and comments on Elise's beauty, suggesting there could be some competition for her. The Cardinal agrees and mentions that many families are asking for Elise, prompting Wendelin to joke about joining the race as well. The Cardinal takes this seriously and asks Wendelin if he would take Elise as his wife. Wendelin replies that he is still underage, so it would only be an engagement. The Cardinal agrees but reminds Wendelin that Elise is only 12, asking if he would like a proper wedding when they are both of age. Wendelin laughs, making a joke about giving up bachelorhood in 3 years, and the cardinal immediately says it's settled. Wendelin is stunned that he's already engaged in such a short time. Later, the cardinal is having tea in a garden with his butler, discussing the events surrounding the true baptism and his granddaughter's engagement to Wendelin. He wonders if he was a bit too pushy, but the butler reassures him that his actions were fitting. However, he questions what they will tell Duke Bleichroder, the lord of the Baumeister family. The cardinal responds that he anticipated this tricky situation and first secured the king's backing, meaning even the duke can't object now. The butler notes that the cardinal's intellect is truly remarkable. The cardinal then talks about the offering he received. The amount of gold from the gift Wendelin gave is simply staggering. The butler mentions that even though Wendelin is young, he understands the power of the church well, and the cardinal agrees. The butler also points out that the Hohenheim family holds the rank of Viscount, which is why the cardinal always wanted Elise's future husband to be at least a baron. However, he now understands why the cardinal chose Wendelin, and tells him that his judgment is sound as he sips his tea. At Wendelin's home, his friends are surprised to hear how things turned out for him, while Wendelin is shocked that he didn't get to know Elise better before their engagement. His friends inform him that this is normal because most of them didn't even meet their wives before marriage. Wendelin is taken aback and sits down as makeup is applied to him, making him look like a clown. He then heads to the store, where many people stare at him, but thankfully, no one sees through his disguise, allowing him to stay calm and relaxed. Later, while walking with Erwin, Wendelin spots a guy who always wants to be his retainer. He tries to hide, but the guy sees straight through the disguise, making a joyful noise that attracts a crowd eager to see Wendelin the Dragon Slayer. Wendelin and Erwin quickly use magic to teleport away before things get any stranger. Back home, Wendelin cleans off his makeup and sits down with Erwin and another man to discuss how to deal with those wanting to be his retainers. Erwin jokingly asks to be Wendelin's retainer, to which Wendelin agrees, surprising him with the quick answer, and their friend congratulates him. Later, Wendelin teleports to the cardinal's home but doesn't want to be seen, so he quickly hides when the cardinal's gaze falls on him. He then takes Elise aside for a private discussion about their upcoming marriage. Wendelin asks how she feels, and Elise says her heart is full of excitement because her grandfather chose him. She has heard stories of his heroics and feels lucky to marry someone like him, which makes Wendelin feel better. Back at Wendelin's place, Lena and Louise are surprised to learn that while they were out shopping, Erwin became Wendelin's retainer. The two think about asking Wendelin if they can be his retainers too, but Erwin tells them that if they want, he can help them, and they thank him. Erwin is thrilled, stating he's always wanted subordinates, so he will assist them. Louise and Lena then chat, realizing they don't want to be his underlings. They brainstorm ways to outmaneuver Erwin. Suddenly, the door opens, and a couple asks the kids for help. Seeing how the couple interacts sparks an idea in Louise. She suggests they should become Wendelin's concubines since they're daughters of military retainers and can't be wives. She dubs it Operation Concubine Seduction. Wendelin returns, opens the doors, and Louise announces it's time to start the operation. He takes his seat, and Louise awkwardly begins dancing in a failed attempt to seduce him. Wendelin looks on apathetically before being called down for dinner, and he leaves. Later, in their room, Louise and Lena sit on the bed. Louise excitedly works on a new outfit for their operation. Lena tells her she admires her assertiveness in wanting this, while Louise explains that she doesn't enjoy being aggressive, but hopes her family recognizes her if she can make Wendelin fall for her. Lena understands and uses Louise's words for encouragement. Then Louise hands Lena a bikini she made, but Lena declines the gift. Elsewhere, Wendelin receives an invitation for a date with Elise. The date is fun, and afterward, the butler tells Wendelin to buy an engagement ring for Elise. He goes to the store and finds a ring Elise likes. It's a bit pricey, but he buys it and they leave in a carriage. As they head back, Elise tells Wendelin he was smart to buy the ring after noticing it had some magical properties, but Wendelin insists that's not the main reason he bought it, because it would look good on her, and tells her she's incredible. He then explains that he's felt pressure lately because of his status as the Dragon Slayer, while Elise has been called a saint her whole life. Wendelin puts some magic on the ring, and a beautiful light emits from it. Shortly after, Elise departs. Back home, the butler and the cardinal have a conversation. Erwin, Louise, and Lena are eating together. Erwin asks how they ended up as Wendelin's concubines. Louise explains that they are already part of the same party and figured there's no need to rush things. Lena mentions their summer break is almost over. Louise agrees and says they'll restart Operation Concubine when they get back to Breitberg. Erwin believes Wendelin deserves Elise in the capital. Just then, the door opens and Elise walks in, asking to see Wendelin. Erwin tells her Wendelin has been summoned to the castle. Elise asks about Baronet Baumeister's character. In the palace, the king instructs Wendelin and Sir Brantak to slay a dragon, which they accept. They head to a meeting room where a guy in a white uniform talks about plans for developing Palkenia Prairie. He mentions the problem is that the prairie is the territory of the ancient dragon, Grey Gorland. Wendelin asks if it's just the two of them. The king replies there are 3 of them, and at that moment, the palace magician, Armstrong, walks in. Brantak and Armstrong greet each other, and Armstrong meets Wendelin, asking if he is the one who defeated the Bone Dragon. Wendelin confirms, and Armstrong says he's better than expected. The man in the white uniform reminds Armstrong he's in front of the king. Armstrong shows respect to the king and tells him they'll head to Palkenia Prairie right away. He assures the king they will take care of the dragon. The king expresses his trust in them. Wendelin is taken aback by Armstrong's power, and Bertag comments that Armstrong is a respectable mage. The three of them set off for Palkanya Prairie. Armstrong leads the team and instructs them to go to the military garrison on the border of Palkanya Prairie to make a plan before they go and defeat the dragon. Meanwhile, Erwin, Louise, Lena, and Herman discuss Wendelin's mission. Herman recalls the mission they went on a few days ago, mentioning that there are many monsters living in the prairie, and there's a chance they'll attack towns once the dragon is gone, and nothing is holding them back. Herman explains they plan to exterminate the monsters. He adds that Baronet Baumeister and the garrison are stuck handling the mission. Lena points out that Wendelin doesn't have an army, and Herman responds that they formed a temporary army. Lena asks if a landed noble with a proper army shouldn't be in charge of the mission. Herman agrees but says they'd want the land, and the palace doesn't want to give away the large territories. He mentions they hope to acquire the land as a reward for merits in battle. Lena says that's why they met a noble of the robe like Wendelin, who owns no land. Herman explains they can settle the reward issue with medals and money if it's a noble of the robe. They hear noise outside and go to see who will be in Baronet Baumeister's army from the window. Herman mentions Wendelin should be their commander, and since he's not there, Erwin will take charge as Wendelin's retainer. Erwin protests that he can't take command, but the people in the house encourage him. Erwin leads the army, which consists of the children of nobles and masterless retainers hoping to earn some glory in battle and rise in society. They're filled with optimistic ambition. That night, they set up camp, and Lena says she's feeling anxious. Erwin reassures her this is their first battle. Louise encourages them, saying they'll be fine since Wendelin defeated the bone dragon in his first battle, and they'll succeed too. Elise enters and informs them that priests capable of using healing magic have been ordered to join the campaign. She asks for Baronet Baumeister, and Lena tells her he just left the garrison a little while ago. At daybreak, Bertag, Armstrong, and Wendelin are battling the dragon. Meanwhile, Erwin, Louise, and Lena invite Elise for breakfast. They group together and eat miso balls. Louise teaches Elise how to eat them. Elise tastes one and comments it's delicious. Erwin and Louise get into a disagreement when one of the army members comes to report that Wendelin and his team have defeated the dragon. Erwin and his group are thrilled. Wendelin, Armstrong, and Brantak talk about the battle they just fought. Wendelin is informed that the battle has only begun since they are about to fight monsters. In the camp for the sick and injured, Elise is busy helping to heal those hurt in the fight against the monsters. She continues to use her healing magic until her powers are spent. After a long day, she decides to leave the camp and rest. Just then, a soldier approaches to tell her about Wendelin, who is fighting bravely and inspiring the army to push harder. This reminds Elise of a conversation she had with Wendelin, where he doubted whether he was a hero. Feeling encouraged by the news, Elise walks away to get back to work. As she works, Elise thinks to herself that she'll do her best because of Wendelin's courage. One of the soldiers she wants to heal thanks her for her efforts. She starts to heal him, but soon realizes her magic is depleted. She asks for medical tools and is handed one. A messenger arrives to share that the frontline troops are returning victorious. The camp lets out a collective sigh of relief at the good news. Another soldier comes in, saying that Baronet Baumeister is back and injured. Elise hurries to see the Baronet when Wendelin calls her name. She turns to him and suddenly faints. When Elise wakes up, she finds Wendelin watching her. She tries to get up, but Wendelin insists she lie down, which she refuses. He tells her he heard many stories about her from the front lines, sharing how the soldiers said they were healed by her magic. He explains that they could fight on until the end because of her hard work, and he thanks her before going to fetch water. Elise stops him, saying she knows he doesn't see himself as a hero, but she doesn't finish her sentence. There's a brief silence between them. Armstrong rushes over, calls her his niece, and apologizes for worrying her. Wendelin is surprised to learn that Elise is related to Armstrong. Brantak asks Wendelin if he didn't know Elise was Armstrong's niece, and Wendelin exclaims loudly in surprise. The episode wraps up with Wendelin moving into their new house following his promotion to Baron. Erwin, Louise, and Lena help him settle in. Elise walks in and asks if miso goes in the kitchen. Wendelin quickly runs to grab it from her. Elise tells him she was under the impression he was engaged to Lena and Louise. Everyone in the house is shocked, and Wendelin responds no, then asks her how she feels about concubines. She replies that it seems normal to her. Louise and Lena express their desire to marry Wendelin, and he agrees. At the beginning, Wendelin, Herman, and Eric go to Helmut's wedding, where Helmut is smiling shyly as he gets married. During their conversation, Herman mentions that most people would only want to marry one of them to become Wendelin's relative. Wendelin disagrees with Herman, but Herman sticks to his point. He tells Wendelin that he's drawing the whole nation's attention and needs to make a decision about the tournament, or he'll make a fool of himself. Wendelin is surprised, saying he had no idea there was a tournament. Then Eric fills him in. The tournament is a martial arts event that the kingdom holds every 3 years, and Eric expects Wendelin to participate this time. Wendelin is taken aback, but Eric explains that all nobles are expected to take part at least once. Wendelin agrees but wants to join the Mage division, and Eric tells him there isn't one. Eric explains that there are only competitions for sword fighting, spear fighting, archery, and hand-to-hand combat, but Herman points out that nobles are admired for their swordsmanship, so Wendelin must enter the swordsmanship category. Wendelin accepts that, but says he will use magic to enhance his abilities. Eric informs him that any use of magic is banned in the tournament. It's all about pure skill, which doesn't please Wendelin. The next day, Lena, Louise, and Erwin go for a jog, but Erwin quickly collapses. The girls tease him, and he asks if they can follow a training plan since he's been jogging with them for 6 months, while they've been using magic to boost their performance, leaving him unable to keep up. Lena admits that she doesn't have as much magic as Louise, but Erwin insists that even if that's true, Lena is still significantly stronger. She even outperformed the old man who taught her. Still, Erwin feels too weak in comparison. While they chat, the girls notice Wendelin flying away from the ceremony. Louise wonders if he has something urgent to attend to after the ceremony ends, and Lena says he mentioned needing to meet Cardinal Hohenheim. Distracted by this, Erwin seizes the chance to run past them, exclaiming, "Why don't I have any talent for magic?" The girls chase after him as he runs. Later, the trio meets with Brantak, who suggests they also participate in the upcoming tournament. Their lord wants them to make it past the initial rounds. The girls understand and head out to train, while Erwin sits down and indulges himself with chocolate. Brantak asks him why he's not training, and Erwin replies that he has nothing to lose, so it's unnecessary. Brantak warns Erwin that if he doesn't pull his weight and get stronger, he'll be left behind by his group, no matter how much they care about him. This shocks Erwin. At night, the trio has a meal with Wendelin and Elise. They talk about the day's events, and Wendelin expresses relief that Warren, the commander of the Royal Knights, who won the last 2 events, won't be competing this time, since he wants to mentor others. Wendelin believes things will be a bit easier without him around. Afterward, Wendelin asks the rest if they're okay with Elise joining their adventure group, and they agree. Erwin looks a little off, so Wendelin checks in on him, and Erwin assures him he's fine, and then shouts that he will win the tournament. The next day, Erwin leaves everyone behind during the exercise, while Wendelin struggles to keep up. The others watch as Erwin excels, and the girls feel he might actually have a shot at winning. Later, the adventure group is having dinner when they hear that Warren is going to be part of the tournament. The king advised him to become a challenge for the next generation so someone can try to surpass him. Erwin goes to his room, feeling down because Warren is so strong. The girls notice his mood and come to encourage him, but he pushes them away, saying they wouldn't understand what it means since they have magical talent. The girls walk off. The next day, Erwin fills a cup with water from the tap when he sees Wendelin. He asks Wendelin if he ever plans to kick him out of the group, but Wendelin is asleep. When he wakes up, Erwin inquires about Elise, and Wendelin explains that she hasn't been able to hone her skills like the rest of the group but is doing her best. Wendelin's encouragement lifts Erwin's spirits, and he goes back to training. A few days later, the tournament begins, and Brantak has good seats with a friend. They talk about it. Behind them, the adventure group prepares for the tournament. Elise brings a gift for Wendelin before they begin. Wendelin's first match is against Warren, and he gets beaten quickly. Brantak hopes the girls don't come back as fast as Wendelin. Wendelin is sure that the girls will last longer than he will, and truthfully, they'll probably do much better than him. Louise is the first to return. She lost her semi-final match after Lena comes back because she lost to the spinning spear guy who's been asking Wendelin to let him be his retainer. The girls see Wendelin is asleep. Elise explains he spent the night before making lunch for everyone, so he's tired. Erwin wins his match, but gets an injury on his arm. Warren tells him he can't wait to battle him. Louise and Lena treat Erwin's wounds as he confesses how anxious he feels, and they quickly show him the lunch Wendelin prepared for him last night. The words on it calm his nerves, and he heads for the fight. Then there's a time skip. At the castle, Erwin is being trained by Warren, while Lena has a new mentor. Meanwhile, Wendelin and Louise walk down a path, talking about how lucky Erwin is. Louise is on her way to see her mentor, accompanied by Wendelin. After a bit, Wendelin asks Louise who her master is, and out of nowhere, Klimt shows up flexing his muscles. He tells them to follow him, and they run after him. 3 men are working in the field when Klaus goes to meet Lord Baumeister and presents him with a tax payment report. However, Lord Baumeister says he has already handed that task to the 3rd man in the field and will not be involved any further. Meanwhile, Lord Baumeister's grandson excitedly runs to him with his mother close behind, bringing news of visitors. Surprised by the news, he explains to Amelia how rare it is to have visitors in the countryside. Amelia tells Lord Baumeister that the visitors want to discuss Wendelin with him. At home, the visitors deliver a letter from the head auditor, Runner, to the boss. Reluctantly, he collects it and hands it to Amelia to read, assuming it's just another request for him to join the family that Wendelin is part of. But as Amelia opens and reads the letter, she discovers unpleasant news. Wendelin has just passed away while exploring some ancient ruins. Wendelin checks himself in the mirror, fully dressed in his armor, reminiscing about how after all these years, he's now a master and can turn his friends into adventurers too. Feeling powerful, He vows to his fellow adventurers to rebel against anyone who tries to steal their freedom. While they're still celebrating, Brantak shows up at the party, apologizing for interrupting and handing over a letter from the king that mandates they explore some ancient ruins. Wendelin can't refuse it and realizes that nothing has really changed. Brantak, Wendelin, and his party arrive at the ancient ruins. Wendelin asks Brantak if the ruins are dangerous. Brantak tells them the story, saying that every adventurer who has gone to explore the ruins has never returned. Elise adds that a dragon is in the ruins, which Brantak confirms, explaining that's why Wendelin and his party were chosen, as the guild knew the ruins would require an experienced group of adventurers for the task. The adventurers walk through the ruins, terrified of what awaits them. After a while, they see a door and walk through it, wondering what happened to the bodies of past adventurers. Brantak realizes it's a trap and urges them to hurry through the door, but it's too late. The door closes, and they fall into the trap. Unable to move, Brantak informs them that the trap was set by an ancient civilization. He tells them to prepare for battle, even though he has no idea what's going on. Brantak vanishes, and one by one, they disappear too. The party reassembles at a place called the Reverse Hanging. The trap set by the ancient civilization teleports everyone in the ruins to the bottom floor, where they must find a way back up to survive. This shouldn't be too difficult for the party since Wendelin has teleportation powers, but he explains that his powers only work if he knows where he is and where he's teleporting to. Otherwise, they're useless. This leaves the party with only one option, the hard path up the stairs. Terrified, the party starts climbing the stairs to return to the surface. Along the way, they pass through a door and enter a hall filled with an army of robots called golems. The door shuts, trapping them with nowhere to go. The golems spring to life, fighting them to prevent their escape. The party uses their physical energy and magical powers to battle through the army, ultimately winning. They discover the skeletons of the earlier adventurers and hear the march of golems approaching. Back at the castle, there are growing worries about the adventurers since it has been 5 days without any news. At the ruins, the golems swarm out in large numbers, not giving the party the space or time they need to recover their energy and stamina. The adventurers are drained and tired, but they push through anyway because they have to if they ever want to get home. They keep moving and reach a passage where they find no golems. They celebrate thinking it's finally over, but a dragon golem and her army of robots are still to be dealt with. The party gets surrounded by the dragon golem and her troops. Despite their exhaustion, they fight through them. Wendelin and Brantak, running low on strength and stamina, come up with a plan to get past the dragon golem. They decide to combine their powers and hope it's enough to take down the dragon. While they're trying their best, Wendelin, who is at the forefront, realizes that even their combined powers won't be enough. Elise, one of the adventurers, dashes over to kiss Wendelin, releasing her magical light spell into him before fainting. This spell helps them recover lost strength, stamina, and magical abilities. With this extra power, Wendelin finds the strength to defeat the dragon. They take down the dragon golem, and Wendelin, completely exhausted, joins Elise and collapses. The episode wraps up with the party waiting for Wendelin and Elise to recover. They make their way to a library where they discover the ruins were created by a mage named Count Ickelberg from an ancient civilization. The ruins are designed to ensure that anyone who passes through is smart and worthy enough to inherit the civilization's legacy. They also find many ancient airships that are the core of their magical airships. In the first scene, the adventure group stands before the king, and the king's aide informs them about the earnings from their adventures and support. The total comes to about 20 million gold coins, which will be paid in installments over 20 years. After the briefing, Wendelin tells Klimt that he and his group will be leaving the capital city. This surprises Klimt, but Wendelin explains that he has decided to base their adventures out of Breichberg. Klimt understands but feels the place will be lonely without the group. He tells Wendelin that he will focus all his energy on uncovering the culprit behind the false death rumors so that Wendelin can travel in peace. Wendelin wonders who the rumors are about and is shocked when Klimt reveals that they are about him. People thought he had died, and some even fainted thinking he was brought back to life. Wendelin asks who would even start such rumors. Klimt explains that successful individuals often incite jealousy or envy in others without realizing it and end up being hated by people they don't even know. The rest of the group mentions they have faced envy for being in the same group as Wendelin, especially now that they are receiving such large sums of gold, which will only make things worse. Lena has a suggestion. The Adventurers Guild has a formal system for disputing the division of rewards, and she believes they can use it. She proposes that they complain their share of the spoils is too much. Klimt thinks it's a good idea, but asks where the freed up money will go. The trio looks to Wendelin, but he says he doesn't want such a large amount either, so they turn to Elise. Louise asks her what she plans to do, and Elise responds that all her assets belong to Wendelin. Wendelin observes everything happening, and thinks to himself that everyone seems to be piling more pressure on him. Meanwhile, Sir Ruckner's men sigh in frustration because they are upset. Wendelin survived his plan, but Ruckner is happy since everything has gone according to his wishes. From a distance, someone in a hoodie walks toward the castle, and moments later, Wendelin briefly senses a presence at the window but dismisses it. He is seated with the group as they eat. The group discusses the need for someone to protect the castle during their move because Wendelin is very disliked. They agree that the person should be strong and a fan of Wendelin, ultimately deciding it should be Roderick, the spear guy who always asks Wendelin if he can be his retainer. retainer. The thought shocks Wendelin, but he agrees. They go to find Roderick, who starts to cry at the responsibility he's been given. Wendelin senses the same strange presence again, and while they eat, everyone else notices that someone is watching Wendelin. Roderick warns him to get away quickly because the capital currently isn't safe for him. Wendelin understands but mentions he has one last thing he wants to accomplish before leaving the capital. Later, the mysterious person takes off her hoodie at the market, revealing she's a girl. The next day, Wendelin and his group head to the research lab, where they are guided by a girl who explains that the lab was built with ancient magic civilization as its theme. The group encounters the head researcher, Lucas Gotts Beckenbauer, who welcomes them warmly. Wendelin asks if he has any magic circle capable of summoning anything the user imagines. Lucas shows it to Wendelin but explains it's still a prototype, meaning it may require vast amounts of magic power under certain conditions. However, in theory, it should be able to summon anything. Wendelin steps onto it and begins to visualize something in his head, while the rest watch as he conjures up a pair of pants, specifically, the ones their guide is wearing. She punches Wendelin hard, and he apologizes for letting his mind wander. Elise seems a bit jealous. Wendelin tries to explain himself, but only Erwin listens. He moves on to work with the machine again. Later, the group pulls a cart filled with dirt, which creates a smell that attracts the strange girl. But before she reaches them, the group teleports away. She goes to their home and notices a mini-ball taking place, and everyone looks happy and smiling as they eat. After a while, Wendelin brings some tuna for everyone to eat with soy sauce he developed over 3 years. Hesitantly, everyone takes some and realizes it's incredibly delicious. They eat while the mysterious girl keeps peering through the windows, starving at this point. As the party goes on, someone informs Wendelin that it's Lord Commissioner Ruckner's younger brother, Head Auditor Ruckner, who's been spreading rumors about Wendelin's death. Wendelin hasn't met him before. Ruckner planned to manipulate Wendelin's brother, making him indebted so his sons would inherit after Wendelin, giving Ruckner more influence. Wendelin is shocked that Head Auditor Ruckner would involve his family in this. Concerned, Wendelin is reassured by the spear guy, who tells him not to worry because he has set some things in motion for Wendelin's sake. He started a rumor that Head Auditor Ruckner was involved in an attempt on Wendelin's life. The spear guy explains that even if it's just a rumor, it will spark a minor investigation leading to the discovery of the Head Auditor's secrets, even if he might not be punished. Wendelin asks how he found this out, and the spear guy reveals that the head auditor is his father, and he knows his tricks, even though the head auditor never acknowledges him. Suddenly, there's a loud crash at the door as the mysterious girl bursts in, strides over to their table, and quickly grabs a meal. Wendelin is taken aback. Then, Lord Marshal Edgar calls the girl by her name, Wilma, and asks her to introduce herself to the adventuring group. Marshal Edgar shares that Wilma is his daughter and asks her what she thinks of the group. She says she's been following Wendelin to be sure he can feed her, and she tells Wendelin he has passed the test. Wilma looks adorable, but she has magic constantly flowing through her, making her always hungry because of her immense power. Marshal Edgar tells Wendelin he wants him to take his daughter as a bodyguard, and if Wendelin likes, he can even marry her. Wendelin tries to explain that when they return, they plan to just go hunting, so he doesn't need a strong bodyguard, but Marshal Edgar doesn't get it. He tells Wendelin he heard that Wendelin is going to deal with monsters, then calls Duke Bleichroder to sort things out. The Duke tells Wendelin he has a request for him. Meanwhile, some people received fake news about Wendelin's death and found a note in the letter saying the couple should inherit Wendelin's mansion. As they ponder this, they look outside and are astonished to see Wendelin and the rest of his group. The episode kicks off with people gathered around a table, and Lord Baumeister sitting at the end. Brantak starts telling the tale of the former Duke Bleichroder, who led an expedition 15 years ago into the enchanted forest searching for a magical cure. That expedition ended badly, leaving 0 soldiers and the former Duke dead. Lord Baumeister recalls how he answered the Duke's call and sent his own troops, but he trails off, pausing to sip his tea. Brantak continues, explaining to Lord Baumeister that the bodies of the fallen have now risen as undead, specifically zombies, which is why his lord has requested they purify all the undead before they transform into stronger undead, like liches. Lord Baumeister is furious and slams his hands on the table, nearly causing Wendelin to choke on his tea at the mention of the king requesting his troops again. Brantak assures Lord Baumeister that they will handle the purification, and that he came to discuss how to manage the monsters they would face during the process. Kurt, the eldest son, quickly informs Brantak that the enchanted forest belongs to them, and he expects tribute for the resources they take from the monsters. The messenger inquires about the distribution percentage. Kurt then asks Klaus what the standard sharing percentage is, and Klaus replies 30%. Kurt turns to Brantak and states he will offer 50%. Herman asks Brantak if he could collect their fallen soldiers' belongings, and Brantak agrees. Herman urges Kurt to be reasonable in his negotiations, but Kurt brushes him off, arguing that they don't need the soldiers' belongings since they were poor, and their funeral has already been held. Elise tells Kurt that unless the funerals are performed after the souls are purified, the dead won't find true peace. She offers to help with the funerals again after the purification. In the next scene, Kurt rips up a letter he received from the head auditor, questioning his audacity. He's at a village meeting with some men, and one mentions hearing that Wendelin is coming to purify their sons left behind in the forest. Kurt denies this, and states that Wendelin is just an adventurer on a quest, who will leave as soon as the purification is finished. Brantak, Herman, Wendelin, and the group are at the table having a meal. Wendelin asks why Kurt has lost his sense of reason. Herman claims it started after Kurt left home. Herman offers Brantak some wine, which he declines. Lewis is surprised and asks why he doesn't want a drink. Brantak simply says he doesn't want any wine. Herman offers Wendelin some pie. Marlene asks Wendelin to keep an eye out for her grandfather's belongings, which he agrees to do. She expresses excitement and wishes he were the heir. Wendelin, Brantak, and their team try to lure the zombies out of the forest. They stand at the entrance, calling out to the zombies, insulting and cursing them. The zombies start coming out. Elise calls out the purification spell, and the zombies are purified. Erwin and Brantak collect their belongings. Then a zombie adorned with decorations and a sword steps forward, and they realize it's Duke Bleichroder, who is also purified. They were about to leave when they realized they hadn't seen Marlene's grandfather, the one she mentioned while serving them at mealtime. At that moment, they spotted a wyvern that had become undead, but it wasn't being purified as quickly as the other undead soldiers. They fought the wyvern and cut off its head. After that, the wyvern was purified. Monsters also came for purification, but the spell didn't work on them right away. They fought the monsters while the spell did its job. Afterward, they dismissed the spell and were all exhausted. Then one of them pointed to a soldier walking out of the forest wearing armor, similar to what Marlene had described, and it turned out to be her grandfather. They approached him and discovered he had turned into a lich. He asked about Marlene, and they told him she was doing well. He surrendered as they purified him and asked them to take care of Marlene. They returned to the village with the belongings of the soldiers they had collected after purification, and the villagers thanked them for it. But just as the villagers were about to take the swords, they received word from Kurt that all the iron should be sent to Eckhart, the village blacksmith, since the village was low on iron. Wendelin stepped in around that time and asked Kurt if iron was all he needed to allow the villagers to keep the belongings of their loved ones who died in the enchanted forest, and Kurt agreed. Wendelin magically provided iron, which caught Kurt off guard, and he let the people be. The villagers thanked Wendelin for ensuring Kurt wouldn't take away the belongings of those who died in the enchanted forest. Brantak, Wendelin, and the party met Klaus, who asked why they hadn't left yet. Wendelin explained that they were ordered to stay until the other belongings from the enchanted forest were identified by their owners. Klaus invited them to a funeral happening the next day. At the funeral, Elise offered prayers, and Wendelin met the wife of his older brother Kurt and their kids. He made mizwame for the kids, and they loved it. After the funeral, Klaus asked Wendelin to become the heir of the territory, but he declined, saying he had already been made head of a different independent line, so the royal palace would never allow him to inherit the territory. But the people at the royal palace wanted him to lead their territory. Brantak walked in and agreed with everything Klaus had said to Wendelin. The king and his men are sitting around a table, looking serious. The king is studying a map while in the background. Brantak speaks up, saying that the crown wants to develop a ridiculously large section of untapped land. The scene shifts to Brantak and Wendelin, sitting on a cliff deep in the forest. Brantak fills Wendelin in on some happenings in the royal palace, continuing his earlier thought by asking Wendelin why he thinks the palace hasn't been able to develop the land. Wendelin responds that it's because the lords of the land have been normal people for generations. Brantak agrees, adding that another reason is that the current heir is a scumbag. There's a brief flash, and then we see Kurt sheathing a dagger, his face filled with anger. The scene cuts back to Wendelin and Brantak. Brantak tells Wendelin that things look bad until he showed up. Because of this, the people want to replace the current lord, but Wendelin insists they can't give his father the order to do it. Brantak confirms this, explaining that the other lords would be scared. He elaborates that's why the palace made a plan to provoke Wendelin's troublesome brother. Once Wendelin takes him down, they'll have Wendelin's father take responsibility and retire, making Wendelin the next in line. Now it dawns on Wendelin that this is why he was sent here to confront his brother. Wendelin asks Brantak why he didn't mention any of this earlier, and Brantak replies that he knew Wendelin didn't want to become a lord, and that the plan would proceed, regardless of Wendelin's awareness. Wendelin wonders what Brantak would have done if he had been killed on the dangerous expedition, but Brantak reassures him that it wouldn't have happened since he kept an eye on Wendelin throughout, not even having a drink in the meantime. The people want Wendelin to be the lord and set everything right, even if he's reluctant. Brantak explains that Wendelin has valuable assets necessary for land development. Wendelin then concludes that all the assets he has kept, which seem excessive, were part of this plan. The next day, the adventure group is having dinner. Wendelin sighs, saying he will have no choice but to do what the palace wants. Lena reminds him that the palace said he could still continue adventuring even after becoming a lord. As this unfolds, everyone at the table is using 2 chopsticks each to arrange a bloody substance. Louise comments that Wendelin's behavior is unusual. He usually complies with orders right after they come from the palace without overthinking it. Suddenly, the door swings open, startling Wendelin, causing him to break his chopsticks and spill his gooey substance. The man at the door informs Wendelin that he has visitors. Wendelin's nephews have come to learn some magic from him, their excitement evident as Wendelin attempts to teach them how to make water bubbles with magic. The rest of the adventure group observes this, leading Louise to say she now understands Wendelin's hesitation. Erwin is still confused, but Lena explains that Wendelin is hesitant about about becoming the Lord because these young boys would lose their nobility and their lives would worsen afterward. Meanwhile, a strange man watches from behind a tree, casting wicked eyes at Amelie. Later that night, Jurgen and some other men walk toward the house, expressing demands they feel are critical for their future. Suddenly, Herman, Wendelin, and Brantak teleport in front of them, startling Jurgen, who falls to the ground. Herman asks the men to explain themselves, and Jurgen replies that they are going to Sir Artur to make demands, wanting Wendelin at Kurto be their lord. Herman says he understands but warns that there may be consequences from Kurt if things go south. Jurgen insists that all the men are ready for punishment because they are fighting for their futures right now. Herman points out that Kurt only offers favorable treatment to those close to him while squeezing taxes from everyone else. Wendelin asks the men to please calm down as he needs time to consider this decision. Herman says they are in a hurry because the men found out they'll be identifying the belongings of the deceased the next day, and afterward, Wendelin is supposed to leave the land. Wendelin insists he has no such plans, then asks one of his men about where he got his information, and it turns out there was some misinformation that Wendelin would be leaving the next day. The men resume their discussion while Brantak spots the village chief in the bushes and secretly goes to confront him. During their talk, he warns the village chief that the royal palace doesn't like people acting independently. The village chief thanks Wendelin for the warning and, as he leaves, advises Brantak to be careful around Lady Amelie. At Kurt's home, Lady Amelie is moving around when she overhears Kurt arguing with the men he favors because other villagers might start supporting Wendelin. Kurt threatens to punish any villagers who go against him. Now, back at their home, Elise gives Wendelin some hot tea. He's with his friends and asks what will happen to Kurt if he becomes lord. Brantak responds that Kurt will be killed. The next day, Wendelin decides to visit his brother to talk, so he teleports to his home. Wendelin asks Kurt to give him some undeveloped land when Kurt becomes lord after their dad retires. Wendelin tells Kurt that if he agrees, he plans to help him boost his noble rank and will even provide funds to develop the land so its citizens can have better lives. But Kurt refuses, grabs a map showing the land Wendelin wants, tears it into pieces, and angrily accuses Wendelin of trying to swindle him to steal his authority. Wendelin insists that's not true and warns that if they're not careful, there could soon be rebellion in the land. Kurt slams a cup of coffee against the wall and tells Wendelin his actions make him furious, then calls him a thief and screams for him to leave. Wendelin walks away and has a conversation with Lady Amelie outside. He explains that his discussion with Kurt was his last chance for peace, and now he doesn't know what to do. Amelie tells Wendelin that she doesn't care what others think, she just wants to protect her children's lives. That's why she's making them get closer to Wendelin. Even if it seems sly, she doesn't care. After she goes to play with her kids, Wendelin watches them having fun and ponders for a few seconds before leaving. Amalie watches him go and hugs her kids tightly. At home, Wendelin and the rest of the group are making breakfast. Louise is paired with Wilma, who holds the bowl for Louise to stir. Wilma is excited and keeps repeating the word egg over and over. Erwin is paired with Lena, whisking his eggs but complaining that his arms are hurting. Wendelin is paired with his future wife, Elise, and unlike the others, he's using magic to do his whisking. Lena calls him a cheater for doing so. Wendelin ignores Lena and says everyone should add oil. Elise smiles, but then Wendelin's tone shifts. He tells his friends he's made his decision, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt because he's ready to become the lord of the land. However, he won't let anyone die. He plans to follow his own path, not the palace's agenda. Wendelin asks his friends to support him on this journey. At first, they say nothing because they're distracted by their cooking, but then Elise smiles and reassures Wendelin that his friends are always on his side, while the rest of the group nods in agreement. The next day, Wendelin and his friends are at the market selling items they brought from the capital, like delicious foods, armor, weapons, and garments. They're selling things cheaply, upsetting the men who work for Kurt because they're losing customers. That night, the men report this to Kurt, who gets infuriated. He throws his chair aside, and one of the men suggests killing Wendelin, but Kurt reminds them that Wendelin is a magician, so they wouldn't win a fight against him. The men feel defeated. On their way back, Wendelin confronts 3 of them, offering money to persuade them to move to the capital, thus thinning out Kurt's ranks. Kurt learns about this from his right-hand man. His men have begun to betray him. The next day, Wendelin explains his plan to Roderick as they look for a safe place for Kurt and his children during the chaos. The plan involves taking Kurt to a church and confining him to a life of repentance and prayer. Roderick thinks this might be harsh, but at least he'll be alive, while Kurt's wife and children will also survive, even if far from home. Roderick believes this is better than living in shame. As Wendelin and Roderick walk through the city, they talk about other happenings around town. Wendelin asks if things at home are the same, and Roderick says that things haven't changed much, but more people want to meet Wendelin every day. Roderick explains that the interest is due to people wanting rights to undeveloped land, a project that involves significant money, attracting many individuals. Meanwhile, in an alley, a strange man receives a dragon's flute from a noble and takes it to Kurt, who is furious because all his men have deserted him. The man tells Kurt that with this flute, he will be able to kill Wendelin. It's raining heavily as Kurt talks with the man who gave him the flute. The man tells Kurt that head auditor Ruckner deeply regrets giving him the wrong information before. Kurt wants to kill Wendelin with the flute and asks how much it will cost. The man replies that it will be nothing, but once Kurt becomes lord, he should show them favor during negotiations for the undeveloped lands. Kurt agrees to the terms. He now understands that the man is seeking his help because they're both in tough situations. Kurt laughs as he looks at the flute. The next day, Brantak is in the forest with the party and uses his sensory powers to locate Kurt, informing them that Kurt is coming. The party's plan worked because they made it seem like Wendelin was alone in the forest to draw Kurt's attention. Brantak tells Wendelin that his plan to push his brother over the edge is in its final phase, but the group is confused and surprised that the man who met with Kurt didn't bring an assassin to help against Wendelin. Brantak suspects it's probably because Kurt has a secret weapon. Wendelin goes to meet Kurt, but Kurt knows the retainers are there and asks them to come out. The group reveals themselves. Kurt tells Wendelin how everyone adores him and wants to make him lord, even though he's not the eldest, just the 8th son. Then Kurt shows him the flute, threatening that if Wendelin moves, he'll blow it. Wendelin freezes, and Brantak screams upon recognizing the flute. It's the infamous dragon flute. Brantak explains the origin and use of the dragon's flute. He tells them it's a magical item discovered from ancient ruins that summons every dragon within reach in the Great Reeg Mountains, and Wendelin's power isn't strong enough to fight them all at once. Kurt laughs. Erwin warns that Kurt will also be in danger if he summons the dragon. Kurt assures Erwin he already has a plan for his safety. Elise tells Kurt the dragons will come and make people suffer. The party tries to convince him that blowing the flute could even kill his family. Kurt responds that the people betrayed him and he can always start a new family. This shocks Wendelin, who asks his brother Kurt what he's saying. Kurt then launches into a rant, smiling about how he'll steal their assets, develop the lands, and become a greater hero than Wendelin, attracting women to him. Then he would marry again and have another son. Wendelin reaches for the flute, but Kurt moves back, noticing the anxiety on Wendelin's face, which makes him laugh. Kurt tells Wendelin that the thing he hates most about him is his condescending attitude, so seeing his anxiety brings him joy. Kurt laughs, irritating Brantak. He then tries to guilt his brother, saying every death that may come is his fault. He attempts to blow the flute, but Brantak shoots at Kurt, missing him and hitting the flute instead, which doesn't get affected. Kurt laughs, saying at least the flute is on his side, then screams, "Die Wendelin!" as he blows it. Kurt blows the flute, and ghost-like beings rise from the earth. Wendelin tries to stop his brother, but the party holds him back, explaining it's malice and he shouldn't go save him. Brantak says he sensed something was off since the dragon's flute is legendary and not easily obtained. He tells them it's a flute of malice, and once blown, it draws malice from the environment and turns the player into an undead to kill their enemies. While the summoning is happening, Kurt thinks to himself, wondering why things aren't going as planned and why everyone seems to ignore him, even though he's the first son. He looks at the group and feels they see him as a fool. His sight becomes clouded with red rage. Then he transforms into an undead creature, massive with Kurt at the center. He throws a punch, and Wendelin hesitates to fight him because he's in shock. Elise tries to use her purifying magic against him, but the undead is strong. Wendelin joins Elise to amplify her power, asking her to expand the purifying barrier, which then purifies the undead. All that remains is the flute and Kurt's spirit face. The spirit of Kurt interrupts a party where they discuss splitting land interests, assuming Kurt will be successful. Head auditor Ruckner is pleased, feeling his plan worked, and he smirks as he chats with guests in on his scheme against his brother. Suddenly, Kurt's spirit disrupts the party and attacks Ruckner. The next day, the townspeople gather with Wendelin. Roderick informs Wendelin that everyone at the party died, and Kurt is the main culprit. Because of this, Amelie and her children will find it difficult to live in the city as they had planned. Later, Wendelin meets with Armstrong and Brantak on a small island with a tree. They discuss the fate of Amelie and her children, who are hidden away in the home of the second son. Wendelin worries that people will see Amelie and her kids as part of the villain's family. He feels down because everyone knows him as the Dragon Slayer, but he couldn't save anyone. Brantak tries to comfort him, saying nobody knew it was the flute of malice. Armstrong mentions they've looked into how Kurt got the flute but haven't succeeded. Wendelin expresses that he feels like a target for reasons unknown, and the details of who is behind it are well concealed. Armstrong wonders if the palace might be involved, to which Wendelin responds that he's fed up with the nobles. Brantak agrees but reminds Wendelin to reflect on his own status as a noble. Wendelin ponders Brantak's words all day, and by nightfall, he's at home with Elise. He confides in her, saying it often feels like he isn't truly present when he's with them. Elise confirms this is true. He admits he hasn't adapted to being a noble and resolves to be a better one. Elise reassures him, placing her hand on his before offering him some food and promising he'll improve. The next day at the palace, Wendelin is honored for his service to the kingdom. The king rewards him with all the undeveloped land and invites him to request anything he wants. Wendelin asks for the authority to grant 2 of the 12 open titles created by the noble deaths at the party. The palace is thrown into chaos over this request. The king asserts that such authority belongs only to him. One faction argues Wendelin is just a baron and shouldn't even manage the whole land, while another believes it should go to those who can develop it. Another faction supports Wendelin's claim. As the palace buzzes with noise, Armstrong, the court magician, silences everyone and tells Wendelin to withdraw his request due to the unrest caused by his reckless actions. Armstrong claims Wendelin lacks noble decorum, then suggests to the king that Wendelin could be given the land to develop it using his magic, which the king declines. The king insists that Armstrong's magic is needed at the palace, stating that Wendelin's abilities should focus on developing the underdeveloped land. As the king says this, Armstrong smiles and winks at Wendelin. The king makes his decision, promoting Wendelin to the 5th rank and the title of Count, granting him the authority to award 2 titles. Wendelin promises to serve the kingdom. Later, in a private meeting, the king tells Armstrong that Wendelin has become smart for getting everyone to act in his favor and advises Armstrong to improve his own actions. Meanwhile, Wendelin is with Elise, Amelie, and her 2 children. He promises Amelie that he will grant her children the titles he holds when they come of age, saying they can refuse if they want. After saying this, Wendelin walks away, and Amelie reassures him that her husband's death is not his fault, assuring him the boys will understand when they grow up. She expresses her gratitude for everything Wendelin has done. On the undeveloped land, construction is underway, and Erwin tells Wendelin his powers are incredibly useful since he helped the workers level the land instantly. Roderick oversees the construction, and before Wendelin leaves, he asks him to level more land to fulfill promises made to other lords. Elise and others approach Wendelin with various requests, highlighting situations that confuse him. Elise laughs at his bewilderment. Later that evening, the group enjoys a lovely dinner, and Wendelin tastes the food, smiling happily.